We're going to do a refresher on RaceJoy, and Kevin Lai is going to lead us in that. Before we begin, though, I wanted to there's a couple of administrative things that have occurred. One of them that I've seen is that sometimes people will enable RaceJoy and they use a different email than they used for the certification. In that scenario, you'll find that you still get charged something. So if that's the case, if you find that there's an amount for RaceJoy is popping up, then check the email and make sure you're using the right email. The other scenario is you may get an error message or get charged for something or what have you for RaceJoy, and maybe you haven't paid for their Race Day Suite license yet. So check that out. And if you're not using Race Day Scoring or Race Director for any of your races at all, the price that you would pay for the Race Day Suite is the entry price, which is $150. So you just pay for that if you're not using any of the scoring products for the suite. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Shelly. So very happy to see you all back. Pretty excited about this. Just out of curiosity, what have you guys been doing RaceJoy with? Like, what have been your experiences in terms of like using it for specific races? Has it been like 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, trail races? Like, what have you guys been doing since we last saw you back in the winter?
Mostly longer races.
Longer races, half. Anyone else?
We did it for
Half.
a couple of shorts, but that had like cool things on the course. We had a bakery donut run, so they wanted to like highlight, and they were more into the social media.
Right.
Yeah.
270-mile relay.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's what race was it?
The Ohio relay. So
There we go. Yeah, Paula's the big one. Yeah.
all of the runners.
Awesome. So obviously James will talk about some relays and ultras after this. So I'm kind of here just to do a little quick refresher on kind of what we covered back in the winter. So I'll use the same map, but I'll just go through the import, time and configuration setup, kind of what you're looking for turnaround issues, proximity issues. And then I'll also talk about how to add markers. So we've had some questions about how to like actually add markers, and then how to add some Geo Messaging, so those text alerts, those alerts with the custom messaging that goes out to participants. And then I'll also pull up a kind of little confusing looped course and see if anyone understood what I was explaining. And then I'll give a little pop quiz with no incentive, no reward. That's how we'll do it. Any questions? I think.
Are we supposed to be following along?
No. So if you guys remember back in the winter, a lot of what I did was more show and tell. If you have questions while things are going on, just ask. Just because I'll have it up and we'll be showing it there. So kind of we'll get right into it. So if you guys remember how to load a course, remember that RaceJoy isn't a map builder. You're gonna have to do all that stuff offline. Plot a route, map my run, Google Earth. Like I said, we use Google Earth. If you have any questions about Google Earth, feel free to ask us. So obviously, if you guys remember, if you come into your RaceJoy, add course map, it's just actions, import map path, look for that KML or GPX file that you guys downloaded or created. And so at this point, I don't know if we had this back in the winter, but now it's going to ask you to generate mile markers, and you can do it you can set it to like every 5 miles or every 2 miles, every mile. If you guys remember, for general road races, it's typically every mile. For bike races, it's usually every 5 miles. As a biker, you don't really want to be getting a mile alert every 3-4 minutes. That could just be a little irritating. So typically for bike races, we do every 5 miles. It's kind of what we usually recommend. So if we just stick with one. So at this point, if you guys remember, all the mile marks are generated based on GPS coordinates, your starts and everything like that. And so just remember that you always want to make sure your mile markers are in that right location based on whatever your signage is, whatever your course certification says it is. And remember, you guys can freely move the markers at any point. So if something happens on race day and you don't want to actually change the actual path of the course because it's just last second, you can always just come into your race, and let's just hypothetically say they ended up coming down here on this street, and so that's where mile 5 is going to be. And it's like last second change and you don't have time to actually change the path, just move that marker down to where it's going to be. So just remember that, like, kind of always move your markers to where the runners are actually doing. So if the course is wrong, just move the marker and forget about the actual path, and just make sure the mile markers and everything like that are in the right spot. So once you've got your course imported, remember we got to do the timing configuration setup. So if you just come into timing configuration, a lot of you guys, you can just use this autofill distance. This will automatically fill start to the last mile marker. And then if you just remember to plug in the finish distance. 13.1, we'll save. And again, how RaceJoy works is everything's based on sequencing in terms of using the distance for each mile marker to tell RaceJoy which alert to send out first. So based on this sequence, it's going to be start alert goes out first, then mile 1, mile 2, mile 3, so on and so forth. So everything's based on the distance that you set, and that's how everything is sequenced in. The progress alerts and audio pace, remember, progress alerts are the alerts that go out to the actual spectators, the friends and family that have registered to track their friends and family. And then the audio pace, those are the alerts that are going to go to the actual runner when they're running. So it's, you've crossed mile 1, your split time is 3:59, your estimated finish time is, 8:40. Those are the alerts that are going to go out to the participants. The point radius, if you guys remember, is basically the read field of that particular mile marker or specific marker. We'll go over proximity again, so you'll see it again. And then the progress board display is kind of what you guys are going to be seeing. When you're monitoring, you can view a progress board and see kind of where everyone has gone through. If you don't want to see the start, you can just disable that. If you don't want to see mile 1, 2, 3, 4, you just want to see every 5th mile, that would be the setting there. A couple things to remember here in timing configuration is if it's a regular 5K, 10K, half marathon, or even a regular called solo 100 mile race, your course processing type up here, that's going to be standard. If it's a relay, it's really important that you change that to relay. This basically allows the back end to work as a relay and allows you to set up your exchange points. So once you've got that turned on for relay, once you add the exchange points, which James will get into, that kind of allows you to check on that, okay, hey, this marker right here is an exchange point, and then everything will kind of work on its own. But James will go over that, I think, later this morning. So that'll just kind of a little preview for you guys. Yeah, so if you've got like a 5K, good question, you have a 5K adult and a 5K kids event and a 5K senior event, right? With all 3 different registration options. On RaceJoy, you're just going to create one 5K because they're all going to be running the exact same course. The course itself is not going to be different. But if you have a 5K adult and then a 5K relay, you're going to need 2 courses, one for the regular event and then one for the relay event, just because the setup and configuration is going to be different because you're adding those exchange points on the map for the relay. So kind of rule of thumb, if they're running the same course but you have different registration options, it's always going to be one course, so like one for the 5K, and then relay is always going to be separate.
Is it doing something at the exchange? Like, is RaceJoy doing something?
Yeah, exactly.
Say, hey, this is where the exchange.
Yeah. So basically, what we do in our system is basically say, hey, this is an exchange point, right? And what the participants do on the back end is they basically go in and create a team. So basically, we know, okay, team RunSignup is me, Jeff, and Matt. And I say I'm running the first leg, Jeff running the second leg, Matt's running the third leg. When we hand off, once I cross that exchange point marker, it basically says Kevin's done, leg 2 is now Jeff is going to start. So yeah. But then everyone comes up as a team. So at that point, you've set up your general course, your timing configuration all set up, you've added all the distances for each marker. So everything's kind of set up. So if you guys remember, at this point, we got to look for some issues, right? Remember those proximity issues and those turnaround issues. Quickly go over proximity. If you guys remember, proximity is just basically that read field that each marker has. So if you just go into actions and click on toggle marker radius, basically anything within this circle radius is how, or it's going to get read as mile 3. So if you guys remember, if we come down to here at mile 4, we know that this is a proximity issue, just because we know as they come down here, they're still at mile 3.75, and they're going to be coming in within that field for mile 4. So they're going to get a mile 4 alert when they're really at mile 3.75, right? So do you guys remember what we're supposed to be doing in here to fix this? Exactly. So I'm saying shrink the size. So we got to basically make this read field smaller. So to do that, if you come back into timing configuration, this is that point radius setting. So if we change this to, we'll call it 35, hit enter, and then just hit save, close out of that. You can see that now this read field has shrunk. So when the participants are coming down on this side of the road, they're not going to get an alert at mile 4, and they're going to get an alert at mile 4 when they actually read mile 4s.
In the out and back course where they're on the same exact road, how would we manage that again?
Yeah.
Yep, so that's the turnaround issue. So that's the next issue we're going to get into. Does anyone have any questions on proximity or anything like that?
So you're not actually interactively changing that circle size. You're going into timing configuration to do it.
Yeah, so you can't. So by default, we load everything at 60 meters. It's a generally good default that we found in terms of getting everyone in there. But so you have to go into time configuration, basically shrink this radius field.
And then is there only a proximity circle like that at the mile markers? Like, so do you have to worry that if you look at just go directly across to that field, there's still a proximity that would overlap that circle? Does that?
So
As long as it doesn't overlap the 4?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't overlap another part of the course, because the runners technically won't be running like here, right? They're not going to be running there. They will be running here. So if the radius field comes within another part of the course, you got to make sure that, okay, are they actually hitting mile 4, or are they going to be hitting like 3.75 here? And that's when you shrink. That's when you can shrink the radius there.
So for an out and back course, what's the smallest radius that you can?
So so for an out and back, when they're running the same street out and back. Remember, we're gonna add that dummy point. Do you remember that? We're gonna add that fake point to kind of simulate. Okay, they got to hit this point before they hit that point. So let's take a look at that really quick. And so we never really talked about in the winter. We never really talked about specifically like how can you figure out if there's a turnaround issue. What we do is we use Google Earth. If this is the first time I'm seeing this course here, I would say, okay, I have a turnaround here. This could be a mile, right? From 7 to 8, it kind of looks like it could be a mile, right? But like, you're not 100% sure because you may be just not familiar with the course or whatever it may be. So what we do is we go into Google Earth. We'll download this file and we'll open it up in Google Earth. And then there's a tools and a rule. Under tools and ruler, you can basically measure points. And if we were to do that in Google Earth, you would come up with like between mile 7 and mile 8 is like 0.85 miles or whatever it is. So at that point, that's basically how you can identify a turnaround issue. We didn't really cover that. We just basically told you here's a turnaround issue. So just kind of a little tip there for you guys. So at this point, we've identified a turnaround issue here. So from mile 7 to mile 8 is 0.7 miles. We don't want them getting alert here because they're only going to be at 7.8, and they'll be hearing you're at mile 8, which is just totally not right. So we got to add that dummy point, and so that dummy point is going to say, to get an alert at mile 8, you have to reach this point first, right? So if you come up to the top right corner here, you have these 2 boxes here. The one on the right, the icon on the right, this add a marker icon, you're going to click on that first and you can just add the marker in. Now it's important after you add the marker, you're going to click back onto the hand. If you don't, you're just going to be doing this. You're just going to be adding markers and you're going to be like, dang it, I shouldn't have done that. So you always want to make sure you go back to your hand tool. Once you go back to your hand tool, you can then click on the marker to actually do all the editing and everything like that. So let's add a marker like, here, down here, for example, right? So let's name this marker mile 7.8. We'll set the category. So remember, the categories are all the layers that are going to go into the map. So this is technically a mile marker category. So if you select mile marker, and the title and the marker name should probably match. You can name it, turnaround point, 5K turnaround point, 13.1. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you're naming it. And then just set an icon for there, and then hit save. So basically, what we want is basically when they're running down here, when they hit mile 8, remember, it's all about sequencing. So we want, instead of when they get to this point, RaceJoy says, okay, I'm at mile 8. Is there anything before mile 8 that I need to do before I can get an official alert at mile 8? So by adding a point down here, that's the idea. So once we've actually added the point, we got to configure it so that sequentially it falls before mile 8. So if you come into timing configuration, so you can see now that mile 7.8 has been added at the bottom. So sequentially, it's at the very bottom. So right now, when runners run by mile 8, they're still going to alert at mile 8 early, right? Because RaceJoy is going based on this specific sequence. So if we set the distance to 7.8, and do you think we need to do anything else in this setting for this particular marker? Turn off the alerts, exactly. What do we want? Do we want to turn off alerts for participants and spectators, or one, or both? Do you think it's worth having a spectator get an alert saying, hey, Jody is at mile 7.8, 5 minutes later, 2 minutes later, Jody's at mile 8? Probably not, right? So again, it's technically up to your discretion. If it's like a halfway point and that happens to be a turnaround, that could be one to still alert out to participants and spectators. But if it's a random 13.75 marker, it doesn't really matter. Yep.
This is just a general question. I was just wondering, we're going to have a marathon that used RaceJoy last year, and we're going to have timing verification points at the turnarounds that are like that, at like 7.8. That won't conflict with anything that we set up with RaceJoy, because that'll just be because RaceJoy is just going to their phones.
Yep. So it won't have any issues
So
there.
it won't have anything to do with results or anything.
Yeah, no issues there. So we unchecked progress alerts and audio pace, and we added that distance of 7.1. So now sequentially, it's going to go 5, 6, 7, 7.8, then 8. So at this point, we've kind of solved that particular proximity issue. So what I want to also cover is how to add a Geo Messaging. I don't think we.
Just a quick question. If they got to the 70, instead of saying, they increased their progress to 7.8, you change the message sort of specific to say they would turn around?
Yeah, and you guys are just getting right into my next points here. It's perfect. So what you can do with that is you can just basically make a Geo Messaging alert, basically, to go out to them when they've hit that halfway point.
Sorry, real quick. How do you delete those location things?
So you just go into the marker and just say remove.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you click on it?
Yeah.
Okay, but with the hand.
Yeah, with the hand and not the add marker, because all you're going to be doing is just continually adding markers, and you'll be my guest if you want to do that, but probably not the best thing to do there. So to add a Geo Messaging, you'll want to add a marker, right? So if you add a marker, let's just say we're going to add it here. You'll have to go through the same process of setting up the marker. So add the marker, go back, select the hand tool, and set up this marker. So let's just say it's going to be, cheer, halfway there, cheer. Doesn't matter. So this is going to be a audio marker. So these are going to be audios. So select audio marker for your category. I usually just whatever I type in for the marker name is kind of what I copy over for the title. For the icon, you can kind of choose whatever you want. I like to use the spectator cheer icon. Doesn't really matter. So at this point, we've added the marker, and one would think you would think that when you click on the marker, you have marker info, and the cheer point should be here, right? So it's actually it's not there yet, because we haven't told RaceJoy that, hey, this is going to be a marker that we want to alert out to the participants, meaning we haven't set up the actual timing configuration for that particular marker. So we can't technically make it a cheer point just yet. So we've got that marker added. We come into timing configuration. Here's that marker we created. Let's just say we're going to put it at 6.5. We don't want progress alerts or audio pace on. Basically, when you set it up as a cheer point, when you enable that cheer point and send you a custom message or whatever, that's going to override whatever these settings are. So that stuff is always going to get pushed out. So we hit save. So now we've got it set up as an actual marker in the timing configuration. So if we close that, click back on here, and there it is. So now you see that cheer point is now there. So then you can click on the cheer point, then you can use the text to audio. So you can type in a custom message. You can type in a custom message there, or you can use one of our pre-recorded. It's going to be one of the, I think you can do both. If you see this, selected cheer says none, but you've got a custom messaging down here, that just means you haven't selected one of those pre-recorded cheers. If you've got something typed in and that's all you want, and you see the actual message down here, you're all good there. So that's kind of how you set up a Geo Messaging point.
Quick question, Logic. If you select custom cheer there, it's got to be there like a week or two prior.
Yeah, you're gonna have to email. Yeah, you're gonna have to email us a file of that, and then we'll get it in there for you.
But you're right; it needs to be done in advance.
Yeah.
Like way in advance, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of goes over what I wanted to refresh you guys on. I have one course I want to show you guys. So really quickly, I'm just gonna clear this map out. So this is gonna be the first time you guys are all gonna be seeing this, so it's gonna be a little test here. So let's take a look at this course. This course is great. So they start here. I'll tell you the direction of what they're doing, and then kind of see if you guys can figure it out. So they start right here at the screen. They'll be running this way, and then they'll do 2 loops on here, and then they'll finish there. What do you guys see? Any ideas? So if you look at where mile 1 is, right? So look, so mile 1's on that side. So that's on their way back, coming back down. So what do we got to do there? We got to add a marker. So you've got a proximity issue there, so you have to add a point there.
You're not adding a point because they get to mile 2 before 1. You're adding a point because of the proximity.
Mm-hmm. So really quickly, we're pretty much out of time here, but if you look at mile 3, if we kind of zoom back out really quickly here. So they come through. We've got mile 1 court set up because we've got the extra point because of the proximity issue here. And they come through here, right? They run by 3. Sequentially, we're still fine because it's looking for mile 2 is next, right? So we run by mile 3 here. We're good because it still hasn't hit 2 yet. So we're good. We come through. We hit mile 2 correctly. We're fine. Coming around our last loop, we're coming down here, and look what's going on again. Right. So what are we gonna do? But so you want to put another point out here. That way, put it like 2.75. That way, when participants are coming down here, we're looking for 2.75 before we hit 3. Right. So this is like a pretty good example of a loop course with kind of like a ton of proximity issues. But if you look at it really closely, you're like, okay, let's just follow the course. What am I going to hit? What am I going to hit? And if you just kind of follow it, you can be like, oh, here's what I got to do. Here's a proximity issue. I can't shrink it down. I got to add a point to make it so that sequentially it's going to hit that first before I hit that point. So yeah, any questions?
Is there a way to test that before the race?
Yep.
So
Just to see what happens. I mean, if you're new to this, I always like to go see and feel and.
So we've had a lot of certified timers who set up a test race on RunSignup. They enabled it, And basically, let's say you want to run it this Sunday at 5 p.m. Just create a race, name it, your test race, and then set the race date for Sunday 5 p.m. Enable it, set up the course, and then on Sunday 5 p.m. open up the app and then just go through it. Yeah, so that's all I have for you. If you guys have any questions, just reach out and then we'll get you guys taken care of.